I got a pitch from a publicist, and it was worse than copy and paste because it literally said, I listened to X episode and I thought it was amazing. And they were pitching on behalf of a client, and I wanted to write the client and be like, no matter what amount you're paying this person, it's too much. Like, this is awful. And obviously, of all the pitches I've ever gotten, it stood out because I was like, oh no, this is everything that's wrong with pitching right there.
All right, I think we're up. What's going on, everybody? Arne here, and got another episode of the Community and Conversions Show. As always, bringing you guys some awesome leaders that have figured out some great ways to help you guys, start, grow, monetize your communities. And today we're going to be talking about a podcast guesting strategy with Christine McAlister. And I've been connected with you for probably what, 4 years, even something like that?
Maybe longer. Yeah.
Way back, and we've both just seen how many different ways we've grown into this and to that, and so awesome to see everything that you've been doing with helping people on podcasts, and seeing some more of your secret sauce, and you talk about it and just host a workshop this morning on it is awesome. And I know it's something a lot of people are going to be interested in. So as you guys all know, I don't bring people on this show for no reason. I bring some very select people on, so pay close attention, listen up, and take some notes. So Christine, super excited to have you on, and you want to just fill us in a little bit on some of your background?
Totally. So thank you so much for having me. I literally think we connected when your group had less than 1,000 members. So we've been friends since the beginning of these iterations of our businesses and helping people online in this way. Before that, I ran an online marketing agency for a decade. That was the business that took me out of my 9-to-5, where I was a professor, and I've always been connected to media. So I studied it undergrad and grad. I started working in the media in 2001. I got to work the Olympic Games from 2002 to 2014. I did a documentary for PBS. And those things really showed me like the power of different media platforms to very quickly build know, like, and trust, and to create assets that could leverage that trust like over a period of time, right? And so I'm really excited. I've been a business coach for the past 6 years, and I'm really excited to be able to do what I feel is going to help people create the most impact and reach the most people with their messages, like without having to rely on algorithms and ads and all this stuff that we've just seen go crazy, especially this year.
100%. Yeah. And there's so much importance in having that diversified way to get traffic. And that's something I'm always telling my people. I'm like, I love Facebook. It's awesome. There's a lot of great ways to use it. And great email list, get your text, get some other ways to reach people. And especially with podcast guesting, it's not something you got to go pay a PR company $1 million to do. It's something you can do on your own. And I find, especially when I'm speaking on other podcasts or events or masterminds, the authority that brings versus me just going live and saying something is way, way different. So it's awesome you're helping people get more into that. Why do you think most people aren't getting into more podcast guesting?
Probably for the same reason that it took me a year to go on my first podcast, because I was a little bit intimidated about pitching. I was a little bit of a perfectionist about doing it wrong. And I didn't have experience with it, right? And so I also don't think I understood how powerful it would be. Like when I started developing this approach, it was just for myself. And it wasn't until I looked back over what I had accomplished and that like 35% of my sales calls had come from being a guest on podcasts.
Wow.
And I could directly trace like over 6 figures to being a guest on podcasts. And I was like, oh, okay, doing this the right way, which most people don't do, turns out, is like, it's a real thing. It's powerful. And Like, this is something that I believe everyone should be doing, but we get overwhelmed trying to find the shows to pitch. We get overwhelmed
pitching in the right way. We get overwhelmed with all these different things. And then that stops us because we're overwhelmed.
Yep. So just lots of confusion. And I think the answer to that is, of course, simplicity. So how do you make it more simple for people to do this?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing to remember is that all it is a one-on-one conversation, just like you and I are having, just like you might have with somebody over tea or coffee, that then gets shared with a lot of people. Like, we get so intimidated, we get so nervous, but if you can talk to one person about something that you're excited about, like, you can be a great podcast guest. And so the thing to remember, at least the way that I see it, is that if you are a good human who wants to connect with other good humans in an authentic, genuine, like, service-based way, which I'm guessing you are if you hang out with Arne, because I know you, Arne, then all this approach is taking the principles of being a good human and applying them to the platform of podcasts, like, the end. So any strategies that we're going to talk about, it's all just to help you connect authentically in a win-win-win way with the host, as opposed to the way 99% of people do it, which is transactional. Hey, put me in front of your audience. You should be so lucky to have me, right? Even all the pitches that I get for my podcast now from agencies and stuff, all of them are copy and paste. Here's our expert. Here's what makes them so awesome. Would you like an introduction? And I'm like, no, I would not. Because they don't care anything about me. They don't care about making this a great show. They care about themselves and selling their thing. And, like, I'm not here to pay and promote them to my audience and pay to have it edited and all this stuff. Just for you. Like, I want to have a conversation with another real amazing human, right? And know that it's going to be something I will enjoy and then my audience will enjoy too.
100%. Yeah. And I remember, I think it was actually the first digital product I made in 2016. I only sold like 10 of them, but I put out a freebie on how to pitch podcasters, because at the time, you say you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I had a podcast at the time and I was like, man, people really suck at pitching. Like, this is an epidemic. I need to help you guys. I was like, I'm just gonna make this one for free. If you want some more help, I got you. But yeah, it's pretty bad. So if anybody else has a podcast that's listening, you guys know what those pitches are like. Let me know in the comments. Like, what do you think is the worst pitch you ever had? Let me know in the comment. And Christine, I'm curious, what was your worst pitch? Anything that really stood out?
Yes. Thank you for asking. This is such a good one. And this is, like, part of the reason I do what I do now. I got a pitch from a publicist, and it was worse than copy and paste, because it literally said, I listened to X episode and I thought it was amazing. And they were pitching on behalf of a client, and I wanted to write the client and be like, no matter what amount you're paying this person, it's too much. Like, this is awful. And obviously, of all the pitches I've ever gotten, it stood out because I was like, oh no, this is everything that's wrong with pitching right there. Yep. What about you? What's the worst pitch you ever got?
I think the worst one was just somebody who was incessantly trying after like saying no, or like not knowing them, and like over like months, I think years even. He's come back through different people that were like mutual friends with, and then one of my mutual friends would be like, hey, this guy still wants to connect and get on your show and blah blah blah. I'm like, I don't know that guy. Like, no, get out of here. So like, persistence is one thing, but you got to pick up some hints,
Stalking is another, right?
And talking for mutual friends.
that poor man, like there are over 2.5 million podcasts now. Like find another one. Somebody else will say yes to you.
Yep. Yeah, that's the problem if you end up on somebody's dream 100 list and they don't want to take you off the list.
True. Yeah, good call.
Admire the persistence, but no go.
No, I don't know about you, but I actually find that I have never gotten a yes from following up to a podcast.
Really?
Ever. Of all the podcasts that I've ever pitched, like I used to do follow-up, and I finally realized it's like here in the States when they took that question out of like the TSA screening, the airport screening, has anybody given you a package, a suspicious package? Because they realized finally someone realized they had never caught somebody with that question. And so they were like, we're going to take it out of the script. Right. Yeah. So I stopped following up for the same reason.
That's interesting. Yeah. I think, the coolest part about it is when you do the things the right way, the media opportunities are attracted to you. And I'm sure that's a big part of what you teach, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you are a great guest, if you put together an amazing value-filled pitch, you show up as an awesome human, you create a relationship with one host, they're going to introduce you to their friends. Their audience who are podcasters are going to reach out to you and ask you to be a host or a guest. Like it's exponential. You just got to dip your toe in and give people the chance to experience how awesome you are.
Yep. Pretty much. Yeah. And I think that media snowball effect, I was so grateful that I did that accidentally when I got started. So like way back in the day when I launched that first podcast, I think you were on the old first podcast.
I was.
Yeah. Way back. And when I was kind of learning how to podcast and figuring all this stuff out, naturally I'm in the podcast Facebook groups, I'm talking to other podcasts, all this. And then left and right, I started getting invited onto these other shows. And I was like, what do you know? Connecting with other media producers means it snowballs into more opportunities. So a lot of times people really just kind of got to break through and also just ask, at the end, hey, do you know anybody else who might want to have me on their show?
Yep.
Simple enough.
Yep.
So what are some of the other ways, because I know a lot of people's biggest hesitation with PR as a whole, and especially PR companies, is the ROI. And I know that's a big part of what you preach, of actually being able to turn it into, interest and calls and clients. What are some of the ways you help people with doing that?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is you need to be a standout guest. If you are, and what I mean by that is, if you show up differently, looking to like have a real conversation with the host rather than like, here are my talking points and they're right here in front of me and I'm just going to make sure I cover all of them because I have a book to sell, Yeah. If you show up and you care about what the host is doing, you care about who the audience is, you care about making that host look really good and furthering the trust that host has built with their audience, that host is going to respond to you differently.
Yep.
And the reason that people are listening is because of the host, not because of you, right? Yep. So take really good care of the host and also be willing to share stories. You and I were talking before this, like the trend right now, which I love, it's how both of us run our top podcasts, is having a conversation. So we all in the beginning, we want to hide behind, I don't want to go on a show unless they send me a number of questions that I can prep for. That's not the way that most podcasts work these days. They just want to go on and have a conversation that's useful, that's raw, that's real, that's valuable for the people who are listening to be educated and entertained. And so when you really do that and you are raw and you are real and you share your personal story and you also share what some of your clients' stories as examples, you are silently selling. Yep. You don't have to say, in my program, such and such, which is this long. And like, no one cares about that. They just want to hang out with you. Yep. Right? a lot of times when our clients hire us, it's like, I like your energy, right? And you're like, well, obviously that's not why you're paying me $5,000, but like, okay, how do I deconstruct that? Right.
Yep.
It's a combination of energy and like having a level of expertise and something that people are interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, that's a long answer, but I think it's a combination of like the energetics of being able to connect with another human. So if you really like having conversations, this is a great platform for you.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to speak clearly about what it is that you do, but with like detachment from turning it into a pitch. Because that's what almost everyone else does. So if you go on there and start being pitchy, people are going to be like, next. Would you agree with that?
Oh, and so that reminds me of another experience I had as a host before, where I noticed the guests started getting pitchy, or like, you know, I'd ask them questions and they'd be like, oh, well, they should get my book to go get those answers. And I'm like, dude, now I'm not enjoying this. Like, and then that's going to make the rest of the interview super boring for me. And then that's going to be less engaged. Like, that's why for the most part, pretty much everybody I bring on is, you know, a friend or a client or both. And it's somebody that I can, you know, more easily connect with, rather than, you know, Joe Schmo in my inbox who just wants to promote his book. So that's so much easier when you can get with people in your network, and of course, build your network full of producers.
Yeah, right. And like, also, when you find somebody that you would genuinely like to make a friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think I was in your group really early on, and then I saw that you had this podcast, and I was like, it seems like he's up to cool stuff. Like, I'm going to treat him like a real human and see if we could possibly be a fit to have a real conversation, right? And there are plenty of people out there. You might listen to a show and be like, I love that show. And you might listen to another one and be like, that person really rubs me the wrong way. Well, it doesn't matter if they have a big podcast. Don't pitch that person. If you wouldn't want to hang out with them over dinner, from what you can tell by listening to their show and looking at their stuff, there's plenty of other people that you could pitch that you want to have a long-term relationship with, right? Yep. And those are typically, when I look back on the podcasts where I got, you know, the most interest, the most calls, the most clients, it was always somebody that I was just genuinely excited to talk to. And I think that's another intangible way to attract and monetize, right? It's, as opposed to like, think about if you hired an agency that you just pay however much to get on however many shows, like, you're just showing up with zero information or very little information about this show. You're showing up for yourself. You're showing up because like it's one of 3 that you paid someone to get you on this month, as opposed to like, this person has an amazing network. I want to see how I can help them. You know, of course, they're going to want to see how this is the starting kickoff point for a long-term, mutually beneficial, symbiotic relationship, right?
Totally. And with those friends of yours that, you know, you're already cool with, they make sure to go above and beyond. Like I had Jeff Hunter on. He did a training for some of my clients the other week, and he had all of these slides. He had all of these extra resources. He had all these things. He just completely over delivered it, and everybody loved it. Everybody took action. And you're not going to get that from somebody who's just, you know, going through some agency and landing on some random shows, you know?
Right.
So much better for sure. Cool. So do you want to share a little bit about kind of how you discovered kind of leveraging podcast guesting as one of your main vehicles?
Yeah. So 2015, I started this business, and I had pivoted from online marketing out of, and you know this, but out of a personal tragedy that I went through, which was that at 9 months pregnant, I lost my first daughter unexpectedly, no explanation, in a full-term stillbirth. So she passed away right when I was supposed to have her. And then I had to go to the hospital and have her, knowing that she had already passed. And then I had to go home to a house full of baby shower gifts. and not be the person coming home with a newborn, but be the girl with a dead baby who no one knew how to relate to. And I didn't know what to do with myself, right? I just knew that like this was a defining moment in my life. Nobody that I knew had gone through this that I knew at the time. And I just had to like figure out how to pick up the pieces of what I thought life was supposed to be like and the order of things and try to make some sense out of this, right? Otherwise, I knew it was very possible for me to just like lock myself in a room somewhere and like just numb out for the rest of my life. And I get why people do that. And so what came out of it for me was this determination to create something good, to create a legacy for her since she wasn't here to do it, to create a legacy for myself and help other people create a legacy for themselves. That was like my next level. And so I started in my business by getting clients by running ads way too early, by the way. Like, go talk to Arne if you want to run ads. He'll tell you when it's the right time. I had no business doing it because my message was all over the place. But anyway, I did that because that's what my $1 million coach was doing. And that's the only thing she knew to teach. Different conversation. And then I started guest posting for places like Huffington Post and Thrive Global and stuff like that. I wanted something that would allow me to be home and, you know, kind of turtle up as I recovered. And then I got pregnant again. And I want people to say stupid stuff. So I just like hid out in my house and helped my clients online where no one could see that I was pregnant and say dumb things. So I mentioned that I was intimidated to go to pitch. But I finally had an acquaintance reach out and be like, hey, would you be on my show? And I thought, well, that's easy. Yeah, of course. And I wound up recording that interview from a labor and delivery hospital bed. Wow. It just happened to be the timing, but everything was fine. And I was like, cool. Can I have the room for 20 minutes so I can keep my commitment? And I found that it was really fun. And then I thought, okay, now I'm going to proactively do this for myself because it was just really fun. Right. And I got to meet really cool people, as you do. And I knew a lot of people were podcasting. And so I just developed my own pitch. I started pitching people who I already knew and I could speak to something personal about them that I liked. And then I was able to extrapolate that as it kept going. And, you know, been on well over 100 podcasts now. Like I was able to go, okay, what matters is like, you know, finding some common ground, differentiating myself, showing that I'm going to be a person of value for them. And of course, networking and all of that. But like I said earlier, it has amounted to well over a third, like 35% of my sales calls over the past 6 years and like That's over $100,000. Right. And so I just studied what worked best, what didn't, and like kept tweaking and tweaking and tweaking because I've been working on this for 5 years now. Yep.
Love it. So what do you think is like where most people mess it up? I know we already talked a little bit about bad pitches, but you know, people that are trying, you know, best foot forward, where do they get stuck? Why doesn't it work?
I think what I hear a lot is, well, I've done some, but I didn't get anything from it. Right. So what I said to one of my clients this morning, he said, well, I could talk about a lot of different things. How the heck do I figure out what to talk about? You got to begin with the end in mind. Okay. If I want clients for my like done for you podcast booking service, it doesn't make sense for me to go and talk on a podcast about how I help people make their first 6 figures in business in 10 hours a week or whatever the thing is, you know, like, because I'm talking probably to a different audience. I'm talking to people who are thinking about doing it all for themselves. I'm not talking about the power of this one strategy, right? Yep. So being willing to go, what is my intention here? But also recognizing, this is a little woo, right? But recognizing that like, you can control what you can control. So if you're like, I would love to book one core offer client for every interview that I do, which is something that I see, right, with my clients. It's like, we are not going to wring our hands and gnash our teeth if you go on one show and that doesn't happen, because you could get 3 from another show. Yep. Right. Control what you can control, which is how you show up, And like we talked about earlier, sharing client examples, sharing your own examples, communicating clearly. Like those are things people are really nervous. They're so scared that they freeze or that they fumble. And instead of recovering, they like turtle up even more. And so going in with an intention, of course, it's strategic, but also being open. You know, sometimes the host will become a client when you show up like this, right? It doesn't have to be someone from their audience. So like, is that helpful, or is that kind of too all over the place?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And you know, what I really want to highlight there is the just being open and being yourself, and not thinking it's like some high pressure, holy crap, I got to give the perfect presentation and say the right thing. They are a lot more conversational, and especially, you know, we're live here on Facebook. This isn't something that gets chopped up and perfectly edited later.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's what it's all about, is those conversations. And you know, anybody else out there watching, listening, it's like they're just kind of hanging out by the campfire with us while we're telling stories.
Totally. And that's one of the reasons why podcast guesting is like no other strategy, because you might be with us live on Facebook. You had to decide to stop the scroll to hang out with us. And I'm sure people are popping in and out the whole time, right? Yep. Think for a minute. What are you doing when you're listening to podcasts, Arne? And everybody listening, I would love to know.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, usually I'm doing something like taking a walk, or, you know, maybe doing some chore, something like that, at the gym, driving.
Totally. So you're doing some kind of a mindless task and listening in to learn and be educated and entertained at the same time. That's not the case when you're scrolling Facebook or Insta or anything. Yep. Like you have to compete with ads to get someone. You have to compete with all the other posts and the notifications going off like a casino, right? Like anybody, YouTube, anything else that you can think of. You are not hanging out with somebody for 30 minutes in their ears while they're living their life, right? Yep. And so that's one of the reasons it's such a, like, it really collapses the bridge of trust, right? And the time it takes for someone to trust you. But I think that, you know, like you said, being yourself, right? Also like being open and being willing to like be imperfect with it. For instance, I say like way too much. There was a time in my life when my husband heard me talking, and I think he was going to Toastmasters at the time, and they count filler words. And I used to teach speech, so I get it. But I had literally like Post-it notes with like slash and like slash right up here. Well, do you know what that did? Is it made me be like I can't talk in case I use a filler word. People don't care because that's how everyone else talks too. Mm-hmm. So having filler words is not a reason not to get yourself on podcasts.
100%. And it's such a practice thing too, because it's hilarious. I found two things. I'm gonna pull these up actually, of that really illustrates what progress means. And let me find it real quick. Number one, I found the promo graphic for our podcast episode from 5 years ago. Check this out. It's terrible. It's terrible. This is like a fifth grader doing Canva designs. That's me. I mean, I'm like a sixth grader doing Canva designs. I'm a little
that's better than what I would come up with. So kudos.
Yeah. Now we got some design team to help out with stuff. But this is what it was. This is what it was when it got started, you know, and it's the same way. And let me show you guys. Here's when I
baby
launched,
Arne.
Yeah, baby Arne, 5 years ago, just launching the Millennial Entrepreneur Community. So we're like pretty much just 5 years old. And I'm like in my parents' living room, you know, I got all my like to-do lists.
Look at that.
And like, look how boring I am on video. And like the audio, you can't even hear the audio right now, but you can just tell how boring I am. It was bad. But practice. I did a weekly live stream every week. I've done one for years. You know, we do the show every week. And it's led me to being able to speak in front of hundreds of people and, have an awesome show and awesome guests like you and become a guest on other places. And so much of it really comes down to the practice.
Can I share the picture of my first podcast interview?
Yeah, of course.
I think you might have to give me screen sharing permission.
Yep. All right. Ready when you are.
All right, peeps.
Oh,
There
wow.
you go. Hooked up. People thinking I'm crazy. Hey, it's all good. I'm 8 months pregnant. As long as I can breathe, let's do this interview, right? And
game on.
even today, I'm sure for you, Arne, like done is so much better than perfect. It's like, but I think that at the beginning of business or even a little bit further in is so hard to accept because we were taught to be really good employees, and the wrong things matter a lot of times when you're an employee, right?
Yeah. You're going to get a bad grade. You're going to get fired. You're going to get scolded, all of that. And, even with my funky podcast graphics and my terrible promo videos, I still launched a group that turned into 80,000 people.
That.
Huh?
Yes.
It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. Cool. So any other things you want to share about podcast guesting with everybody? Any big takeaways I didn't ask you?
My encouragement to you is now is such a good time. If you look at a lot of the big companies in the online space, they're investing a lot into audio. We all know the power of video and Facebook Lives, and I love being on camera. And for the reasons that we discussed, a lot of companies are seeing and investing in and sort of telling us the future, which is audio is a big deal. And so because there are so few people doing it right, like literally I have only taught this to hundreds of people at this point. There is such an opportunity for you to go in and create pitches that are the best hosts have ever seen, to be the best guest that they've ever had, and to create a ripple effect that not only like has a bunch of impact because you're helping people with your stuff, but that helps you get known in a way that frankly nothing else can right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so just do it. Start with what's in front of you and try it out and let me know how it goes.
Pretty much. Yeah. And I know you got some awesome resources for people on getting started with this too. So yeah, you have a podcast guest checklist, right?
I do. bit.ly/podcast-guesting-checklist. And I'll post that on the lives.
Cool.
But that's going to give you like the basics of what I need to be looking for when I'm thinking about choosing a show, when I am putting together a pitch. How do I show up and be a good guest? One page, it even has little check marks if you're a nerd like me for the dopamine hits. And that's really going to help you as a resource when you're going to pitch for the first times. And then you can also connect with me from there.
Nice. Love it. And is that something that people's team can do as well?
Yeah, such a good question. So now that I have, kind of done for you clients at the multi 6-7 figure levels, they can do a lot of it for you. Part of it depends on how well they can channel you, right? And how motivated they are. So it is a bit of, like anything, right? But it is a bit of a process to really present and position you in an awesome standout way, right? And so it's important to recognize, all right, what are the things that only I could do in that process? And what's the stuff that's really pretty easy to templatize and we just need a couple of tweaks per?
Yep.
And so I would say if you have a great team member, they could do 80 to 90% of this for you. Nice. And 10 to 20% is what's going to put it over the edge to really have that extra touch that's going to get the yes.
That's awesome. Because I'm definitely going to check it out too. Because I'm very grateful. I get a lot of my media opportunities just from friends inviting me on stuff. But hey, if that's something that I can have my team get plugged into and, you know, create some more opportunities, why not?
Totally.
Cool. So we'll get that linked up down below too. And, you know, as we get to wrapping up, is any last final words for everybody you want to leave them with?
I would say, like, this is a supplement to what Arne is already teaching you, right? So you have a community that matters to you. You have in Arne, like, the go-to person for communities that convert, right? Communities that engage and convert. And so obviously, if you don't already have his book, you're majorly missing out. I interviewed him right about a year ago this time, when the book came out for my show, and we did just like this on live and all the things, right? And it's great. It's such a great resource that I've used myself. And so when you're working with that already and you're looking for, like, you want to pour some gasoline on the fire of maybe like your group growth, or you want to move people further down the funnel of working with you, like they're hanging out, you want a credibility marker that's really going to have them hang out with you for half an hour and be like, wow, this person's so awesome, I want the next thing with them. That's where you can bring in podcast guesting. So it's an extremely complementary strategy to everything that Arne is teaching you. So when you're ready, like, let that supplement these strong foundations that you've already learned here. 100%.
Love it. Yeah. Like what we were talking about right before hopping on, like how much it all has to come together. Like all this stuff stacks up. It's not, you need to be a podcaster, you need to be on the group. You need to do a couple things and really just increase your chances of success. So love it. Everybody, make sure you guys say thank you to Christine. She could be anywhere in the world right now. She's hanging here with us. So your time is much appreciated. Make sure you guys go follow her. Is there any other places we should send them off to? Your Facebook profile, group, anywhere else?
Yeah, if you all hang out on Facebook, you will get an invitation to join my private Facebook group when you grab the checklist.
Perfect. All right, guys, go grab that checklist. Thanks again, Christine. And we will catch you next round, I'm sure.